No, I was dog sitting, and their dog shit all over their floor, and they had a really old wooden floor, and it was all like cracked up, and there was a lot of space in between the floorboards. It got all up in there. It was like wet diarrhea, bro. So bad. Because like you can't clean that up, bro, with paper towels. You need to you needed like a toothbrush and soap, and like I used a butter knife with a paper towel wrapped around it to scrape in between. Even then, I didn't get all of it. There was still some left in there. God. I was working on it for like an hour. I'm like, I'm done. I'm done. I'm like, that's
scoop and poop. Sorry, Andrew Huberman, as you were saying.
Yes. Daddy Huberman was talking about there's a part of your brain called is it the ACC? Not sure what it's called, but they've been doing recent research on it, and it's a big part of your brain, and it's really involved with basically tenacity is the best word for it, and the way to so as your brain develops over time, once you get to 25, it's pretty much fully developed. But from there, your levels of whatever the fuck size usage of your ACC, which is your tenacity, grit, discipline part of your brain, slowly starts to lower as you get older. That's typically what happens with the average people. But the way to stave that off is to boil it down to its rawest form, do shit that sucks. It's the craziest thing. The people that are the most tenacious and when, have the most discipline, like you look at David Goggins, it's you have the willpower to do anything. The people that are at the top, their ACC are part of, I don't even know if it's ACC, it's something like that. That this part of their brain is the most strong compared to other people. And the way to strengthen it is to do shit that sucks, period. It's the craziest fucking thing. And I was like, oh my God, like it's literally a brain structure that you have. And as crazy as it sounds, the more stuff you do that's hard to do, the better you get at doing hard shit. Mm-hmm. But now, like to me, just looking at it from a scientific perspective really just helps me look at it clearly and like okay, when I wake up in the morning and I don't want to do X, Y, and Z, when I don't feel like, as little as it is, it's so annoying for me to weigh in the morning because like the big part is I hate having my feet all fucking freezing cold in the morning. It sounds so stupid, but like it's something that's so small and I hate it. But then I just do it anyways and I weigh and I do my thing. It's just like my daily ritual. And it's like a little spark there. Yeah. And like normally it might deter me away from some other things that I don't like doing, like the dishes or some other stupid shit. But the more you do those hard things, the stronger your brain becomes in doing other things that are hard that make you feel uncomfortable. But the key is that it has to make you feel uncomfortable. Because the example they were talking about was like, Chris Williamson hates responding to emails. He's like, some people don't care. Some people are like, they can just go away emails. They're indifferent to it. It's not like they love it, but they don't hate it. You have to hate it. And if you don't hate it, then it's not for you. And so, yeah.
So you have to hate doing that activity?
Yes. If any of you are listening and you want to hear it, it's called Dr. Andrew Huberman, The Secret Tools to Hack Your Brain in 4K. Modern Wisdom, episode 700. It just came out yesterday.
Oh, shit.
Yeah, it's really good. And it's the second segment. It's called What We Misunderstand About Stress. Yeah, What We Misunderstand About Stress starts at minute 8:16 up until the 25th minute of the podcast, and they go in depth on that part of the brain and basically how to grow your tenacious muscles, so to speak, and how to stave off a bunch of other stuff. It's a great podcast, strongly plug. But it was just... Yeah, I know that's like much more my wheelhouse than your wheelhouse.
No.
But I just
love that.
But it's just like
very cool.
I was just like sitting there.
Yeah, I'm just trying to think of something because I thought I would just watch. I just finished up both podcasts Alex Ramosi did with Chris Williamson. Mm-hmm. I want to say his most recent one, and then one that he did 6 months ago. They're great. Oh my God, phenomenal.
I've listened to those. So shit, probably like 10 times. They're so good.
What? I'm just trying to think of the quote that he said, and I think if I said it, but I think it's in relation to just people just need to embrace. I don't even want to say embrace the suck, but it's like it's similar to that. It's like people just got to get used to doing hard shit, right? And it's similar along those lines because
was it the thing where he talked about it's like giving the frat boys permission to feel shitty?
Yes, that's it. That's it. Yeah, exactly. Yes. So I pretty much. I mean, long story short, I think I don't remember the exact example of like what Alex Hormozzi's kind of example was, but pretty much I think he was the leader, roughly speaking, he was the leader of this group, and the people that were kind of following him and wanted to be a part of the group were performing certain activities that they felt were out of order and kind of not in alignment with what they should be doing. And so what they said to him was like, hey, can we sit down and talk about this? And then Alex Hormozy goes and sits down and talks to those people. And Alex Hormozy is just like, guys, this is what hard feels like.
Yes.
And that gave them permission to feel shitty in that moment in time. Their expectations were reset. And since they were allowed to feel shitty, they no longer actually felt shitty, right? Because they expected to feel that way. Crazy. And it's just completely, I guess you could say, neutralizes everything.
It's so crazy.
Yeah.
And it's so crazy.
I think a lot of times people, and Alex Hormozy even said, he says, like, the biggest productivity hack is just to start working. And it just, you don't need to be in the mood to start working. You don't need to do all these kind of self-help, self-care things. Like, you know, it's like mental masturbation before you actually start to start working. And it's just so true because, I mean, like, obviously, I think, you know, you don't want to just overring yourself and, like, lead to that kind of, I don't even want to say burnout, but just to kind of a standpoint where you're not as productive as you could be, right? So, for instance, my boss and I were supposed to have a one-on-one couple of hours ago, and he was in this kind of really, I just want to say intense conversation, and we were just like, he said to me, or this receptionist said to me, he was like, let's just reschedule. He's going through a lot right now. He wants to give you your full attention, and he just needs to take a step back, right? So it's like situations like that where you got to take that step back. That's when that makes sense. Yeah. But it's in situations like that, it's necessary. Versus when you wake up in the morning, and I think, you know, you should kind of like wake up a little bit before you just go right into work. But like within, I want to say moderation, not excessive. Like, okay, I got to do yoga for 30 minutes. I got to go work out for an hour. I got to go meditate when I get back. Got to go read for X amount. You know, like if that's your morning routine, that's your morning routine. If that's what works for you, that's what works for you. But like that may be necessary for you, but generally speaking, it's not necessary for everyone, and it's not a prerequisite to actually start the work. And so most times, more often than not, when you just start working, like, yeah, it's like, because I know when we start editing and we start whatever project we're working on, case dependent, we'll just start working on a project and we're just like, oh, editing dance again. This is awesome. But then once you get over that 5-minute hump and you just start working, you catch that flow. And something I've been finding works really well is just listening to podcasts while I start editing. Like bro, at least for just putting over flares and then like sound design or color correction, like maybe we can dive into this a little bit more. There's way less mental friction. And I was just like able to multitask and perform each task really well. And there was like almost my threshold for working consistently without trying to compromise a standard point to get to stop working completely minimized. 100%. It's like almost by me putting in that podcast, I gave myself permission to enter that flow state. But you know, I know I was kind of all over the place there, but it's like ultimately at the end of the day, it's like there's no ifs, ands, or buts. Like the work might be tough, the work might suck, but if you go in with that expectation, you don't have to feel that constant mental resistance even past that 5-minute mark or however long the initial barrier is. Yeah,
it's weird because like I forget that every day. I forget it every day, all the time. Like today, like today, doing the taxes for the business. There's something in my brain. A lot of it's I've just had this repeating cycle where I psych myself into hating accounting more each time I do it, just because I'm thinking about how much I hate it. The whole expectation thing. And I didn't even think about the expectation thing once, and it probably would have helped a lot if I was just sitting there thinking like, this is what shitty, stupid work that I don't understand, that's confusing, feels like. This is what it feels like. It doesn't feel good. Like you're not going to feel the same dopaminergic feelings that you get when you post a video that you edited, or when you complete a sales call and you fucking land the gig or whatever. It's not going to feel like that at all. Yeah. No one's watching. There's no one to fucking show. There's no one to tell besides you. And what the fuck does it mean to you? It's like, thanks, great. It's not like, this is an amazing piece of work. Thank you for our accounting. Like, no one cares. Yeah. You know what I mean? Yeah. And so, like, it is what it is. But my expectation that it was going to be glamorous, subconsciously or consciously, was what brought me to the point of feeling so fucking miserable while doing it.
Yeah. Something like interesting and kind of like a segue into another kind of point was, I think what I've been kind of, one of the big things that I took away from Alex Hormozy's podcast was he doesn't, and this is kind of his own internal insecurity, he doesn't feel comfortable talking about a subject
Right.
from a respectful point of view until he has like a stupid amount of evidence
Right.
that shows that he is reliable and kind of a credible source when it comes to this information. Because he was saying how, I think someone said he was like a bad salesman. He was like, maybe I am, maybe I'm not.
I remember that, yeah.
I have closed over 4,000 sales
In person.
since I started my career. Listen, you decide for yourself, right? And it's just like that kind of perspective when it comes to everything. I think it's just so important to keep in mind, because I think, people might be watching this and be like, oh, these guys are fucking new in business, right? They don't really know what the fuck they're talking about. Yeah, you're right. We don't. But I just think it's so important to really just take that kind of back seat, because I love it. It's just like, this is what works for us, right? Is what is working for us. And it's like, take it for what it's worth.
That's it.
And question it, examine it, do your own research.
Right.
It's just such an important mental note to have, because I think we can easily fall into the trap of just feeling like we can speak from a credible spot when, dude, we really don't have any evidence that can say that. Like, yeah, definitely from a videography standpoint, definitely from a self-improvement standpoint, but it's also not trying to put us on a high horse or anything like that. Like, both have issues, definitely have problems, we have a ton of progress. Like, there's levels to this. But just a really important mental note to keep in mind.
Yeah, I mean, like, there's a reason why our podcast only gets a couple views.
Exactly.
Right? Some part of it is that. The other part of it is we haven't been doing it long enough. Yeah. The other part of it is that we're 22. Yeah. Like, there's only so much we could do. It's different because we're not in the entertainment industry. Because to be good at entertaining, I could start posting the shit I send to people on Snapchat, on TikTok now, and just do it 3 or 4 times a day, and my outcome and my level of expertise and credibility in that area is drastically different. But talking about life requires a lot more life experience. Talking about business requires a lot more business experience. And the undertone of both of those things and anything that we talk about in this realm is time. And we haven't had enough of it. So this is documentation. Yeah. That's all it is. And so to me, I completely agree. Transparency is necessary. And then the other aspect is like, hey, still 22. Take it for what it's worth. It might not be as valuable to you as you think. It might be even more valuable than you think. There's a reason why sometimes you listen to a 5-year-old that will crack a joke or will say something stupid to you, and it's like such a profound thing because you're sitting there and you're like, damn, motherfucker just called me fat. Yeah. But, yeah.
Because experience allows for more wisdom, but it's not a metric for how much wisdom you do have.
Right.
And so I think, because I see so many times, like when you make, I don't even want to say, you're more, from the public's point of view, more controversial statements, I guess you could say. No, they're not even like that controversial. If you just actually like...
It depends on how you define the word.
Exactly. And also, it's like, depends on the subject you're talking about, too. It just might be polarizing from like a...
Yeah. The big one is the people's perspective on my, whether or not you deserve someone better. Like, that's a huge one that people are like...
That's actually interesting. Because Alex Hormozy brought this up. He said, I can still be a bad person and be successful.
Yes.
And so he also said, I can still be ugly and get a really, I can still, have poor habits. And I'm not saying this is exactly what his perspective is, but at least this is how I interpreted it. He said, or do you think when he says you can be, I know this is a really interesting segue, but I just kind of wanted to bring it up because I thought about it and it was kind of like in contradictory with, at least I thought, with your perspective about how, you get who you deserve based on your habits and, who you are as an individual. But I think when he said you can still be a bad person and be successful, meaning I don't have to be a perfect person in order to get the things that I want, right? And it's like, at least from his perspective, that allowed him to take a step back and have a deep breath and be like, oh my God, wow, like I can start to do these things and make progress in these areas without, being the most virtuous person myself, at least from my interpretation of what he said. And I'm probably missing a few things.
I think that the real, the base understanding needs to be how you define success. Like, what do you mean by success? Yeah. Like, in terms of Alex Hormozy's story, he didn't feel like a good person. I don't know if he was or wasn't. It depends on how you define good person, and it depends on how you define successful. He was making a lot of money and getting drunk every single night of the week. Yeah. He got in a DUI. He had relationship issues. He was chasing tail the whole time, and this is stuff that he talks about openly. But he had a lot of money. Yeah. Okay, so does that mean he's successful? Just because you're ugly and can have sex with a really hot girl, does that mean that you're successful? You deserve to hook up with that hot girl for some reason. Maybe you're funny, maybe you're witty, maybe you have a lot of money, whatever it may be. Does that mean you're successful?
What's your definition of deserve in that moment? Like, why does that funny guy get to hook up with that?
Inputs and outputs. Period. Okay. Like, do I think you can be ugly and hook up with a hot chick? Yes. Do I think you could be a miserable person and be in a relationship with a happy person? No.
Okay. So it's dependent on the kind of activity that you're in.
Yeah, it literally is just inputs and outputs. So for Alex Hormozy to deserve a lot of money, he needs to do a lot of work, like tangible work. Sales calls, open up a gym, start a business, do the things you need to do to start a business. He can be an asshole and a piece of shit in the process and make a fuck ton of money. Does that make him successful? It depends on what you mean by successful. If your success definition is one-dimensional, is solely based on your net worth, then sure, he's the most successful guy in your neighborhood. But if he's going to bed depressed and he's waking up depressed, is he really successful? That's up to you to decide. I'm going to choose not to define it that way. Yeah. But if you want to define life that way, then that's up to you. But how are you going to look back on your life on your deathbed? That's bird's eye view. That's where you have to really look at it. And to me, you look at Alex Hormozy's life. He doesn't have kids. He doesn't have a lot of time to do things with friends. He doesn't go out to dinners past 4 or 5 p.m. He doesn't hang out watching football on the weekends. He doesn't place parlays and go drinking with his buddies. Like, he doesn't do those things. Like, Buddy has millions and millions and millions, and his wife is the same way. Okay, and he's very famous, and he has a lot of followers on TikTok and Instagram. It's like, okay, do you want that lifestyle? Is that really what success is to you? And again, it's a onesie. But the presupposition is, how are you defining success? And so to me, it's a conversation of definitions, and then the rest takes care of itself. Because I don't believe, and I've never seen any version of you earning something or deserving something, which is the same thing, that you didn't get. Because like even lottery winners deserve that money. Mm-hmm. They played the right numbers. They got lucky and won all that money. So they deserve it because they earned it. Depends on what you mean by success. I don't know if that makes sense.
No, it does 100%. Yeah, because you followed the rules, you did what you needed to do, and you got what you needed.
Right, because if you look at Alex Hormozy when he was first starting to make millions of dollars, like to just give you a snippet of a part of his life, like he was waking up in cold sweats all the time, and he got in a DUI, head-on collision, 60 miles an hour, walked away, scathe-free. Okay, do you want that life? Like, do you want that life? Fuck yeah. Of course not.
Sounds like my life right now.
Right. Always getting into DUIs. No, bro. Like, yeah. Just depends on what you mean.
No.
What you mean.
Yeah. I think that's a big thing, too, because, it's... God, I just don't even... We're literally like, they might as well call this the Alex Hormozy podcast, because, wow. Yeah.
We love you.
We really do. It's like, it's bad. What do you mean by bad?
Define bad, pussy.
It sounded like Donald Trump.
I didn't say pussy. It was pussy.
I said China.
China.
It's pretty good. But yeah, like another thing I was thinking about was just how he's like, I forget what the exact term they use, like in Chris Williamson, but like they just said fuck the rules, and it's just like, damn, like it's so true. Like just for instance, yesterday, like I was like, oh God, I don't want to walk outside with my laundry, right? Like that's just like one of the things, like freshman dorm, right? Like with my laundry outside, like obviously I genuinely don't care, but it's like, it's a superficial feeling that I have, right? And it's like, I'm like, and then we've talked about this before. It's just like, where does that fear come from? It's like those one or two people, right? And it's just so interesting because he just so funny. But he's just like, I'm gonna die. No one's gonna remember me. And like 100 years from now, 500 years from now,
no one.
So, and he just like he shares such a similar perspective on life that I think we both have, and. To me, it's just so interesting because he's like, after I die, I don't think anything really happens. You know what I mean? So, and it's just, you can look at that as like, oh, wow, my impact isn't going to be anything, right? But it's like, almost, at least to him, that kind of nihilistic perspective of being like, oh, I'm going to make no difference, almost allows him, it's almost like you're in a spot where you have nothing to lose. Right. And it's like, I can do anything and it won't matter. Right. And it's, of course, like in the long term of things, if I was to go over there and, hurt Jason, right.
Yeah. It's a personal question.
It definitely is. And I'm not saying it's a one size fits all everything, but it's a very interesting perspective to have. And I totally get that.
And I also want to preface that with, especially teenagers, like you look at your high school experience, when you're a young adolescent, your job as a teenager is to learn how to fit in. And that's for a fucking great reason, which is if you don't fit in and you're poorly socialized and you don't know how to interact with others, which is fitting in, you're fucked. You're out of the tribe. You're not going to be socialized enough to get a job. You're not going to be socialized enough to have a good family or to raise children or to make a good impact on society because you're poorly socialized. Mm-hmm. So your job as a teenager is to fit in, not to go against the crowd and try and be a 1% man. Yeah. Your job is to learn to fit in. Now, with that prefaced, if you're well socialized and you're not a piece of fucking shit, that's when you take a look at this conversation. But you don't want to look at this conversation feeling like you're isolated from the crowd. If you're in high school or in college, and you don't have any friends, and you really try and make friends, chances are, and as much as this hurts to say it, you're probably just a poorly socialized human being. The chances are that you're just super disciplined and hardworking and people just don't understand you. Chances are you're poorly socialized and it drains other people to be around you, so no one wants to be friends with you. That's a harmful statement. That hurts. That hits home for a lot of people. But that is the truth. And maybe what you need to do is learn how to fit in and stop trying to be so independent and different and unique. There's value in being unique. There's extreme value in going your own way and becoming a figure of your own. Yeah. But if you are poorly socialized, your main focus should be, okay, when I have a conversation with someone, do I ask them any questions? Or am I just waiting to be interviewed by people? Does that have anything to do with the fact that nobody asks me to hang out ever, or I never get invited to places, or people don't ask me to do things, or for some reason I'm never in the group chat? Is that why? Or is it because you're Superman? I could tell you based on stats that you're probably not Superman. And it's harsh, but it's the truth. And I think that a lot of people don't like to think about it because it's not that optimistic self-improvement David Goggins mindset of David Goggins doesn't hang around motherfuckers because he wants to get better. Yeah, are you David Goggins? Especially if you're, 14 to 20 years old. You're not. You got to learn how to fit in first. And that doesn't mean that you should do what everybody else does. That doesn't mean you need to go out and drink and party and smoke and do the stupid shit. And if most of the people that you're in class with skip class, it means that can you have a conversation with somebody? Do people want to invite you to play? Like, that's a serious question. A lot of it depends on your parents. But once you're old enough to understand and be conscious, and if you're listening to this right now and you feel like that's you now have the moral responsibility to take care of yourself so then you can take care of other people and contribute something besides nihilism to the world. And I get it's a very, pessimistic perspective, but at least to me, it's the truth.
Well, it's like the longer you avoid that, the truth that you just pointed out, the longer they are going to be running from the path that they want to be on. Because what I was thinking about when you said that, when you go into conversations and your intention is just to talk about yourself, your intention is to show how you're the self-improvement David Goggins beast. Those are some of the most insecure people,
Of course.
and because when you go into these kind of conversations and when someone asks you about something that you're doing that you have a passion about, it's you're not even trying to bring it up. You're just in the conversation and it just happened to arise. It arose, I don't even want to say naturally, but it kind of did arise naturally. And it's just because when I get people like that, I feel for them. When I feel like almost sickened because they're just trying to push something on me so deeply.
I know.
And I almost feel like, since, especially with the person that I am, people pleaser, not going to step on their toes.
People like that love you.
Well, it's so funny because the most empathetic people attract the most narcissistic people. Yeah. Especially because thank God you came into my life, because if I think it would have been very hard for me if I was to get into a relationship. And to be fair, like, I don't have a lot of, I have like no relationship experience, right? Very, very little. Yeah. I think, like, if I was to get into that kind of situation, it would be so hard for me to break up with someone. It would be so hard for me to be in a conversation like we just experienced this past weekend, where I try to express who I am, express my viewpoint, express kind of my thoughts on their life. Yeah. And it's almost like I can't disagree with them or even take a kind of different perspective, because they won't even recognize or acknowledge my different viewpoint or value it. And it's just kind of scary because I know a lot of people are in that spot.
It's similar to the example of like this has happened to me multiple times where I just start lying out of my ass. Not like lying out of my ass, but like living a fake persona when someone asks me like camera stuff. Because I'm like, I feel like I should know because I'm wearing CJ Media on my shirt. In reality, I'm like, I don't fucking know. And I've gotten much better at it when people are like, what do you do to do this? And like, how do you, like especially on the sidelines at games, I'm like, bro, I don't know what the fuck you're talking about. And like, I just try, like with Steve especially, like I'm just trying to, like, not Judson, photographer. And I'm just like, I don't fucking know. Like, I don't. But then sometimes when people ask me stuff, I'm like, oh, like, and I'll use terms to try and like confuse them to make them stop talking to me, and then I'm in too deep, and then I don't let go of the persona, and then I'm like, fuck, why'd I do that?
Yeah.
It's because I'm insecure with my knowledge on cameras and think that I should be at some level because I own CJ Media. Yeah. Like, obviously not, but in the moment, it's hard. But it's the equivalent of like, if you're, if you actually don't do dick for your life and your room's a mess and you don't actually take care of yourself and you're not actually invested in self-improvement, you don't live it, you just like to talk about it, then the way you say things, the way you sound, and your depth of knowledge is going to be obvious even if people don't know why they don't like listening to your advice. It's not going to be of any relevance to it. And that's why I think it's like when you speak from a place of actually knowing, through your actions and how you live your daily life, you speak with more certainty. You speak with much more certainty. And that's why con artists are so effective, is because they fake that certainty, so then you fall for their tricks and then you get their money. And they get your money. Yeah. But it's the equivalent of, like, in most cases, you're not going to be able to sound certain. It's like the equivalent of micro expressions. Whenever someone says something that they don't believe to be true, or they feel something and they want to hide it, like if you're grossed out by something, when someone says something and it skeeves you out, but let's say you say something and I just met you and it skeeves me out, but I don't want to come across in a way where I look like I'm uninterested in what you just said or your joke offended me or whatever. You can record someone's face, like you would record my face, and you can see a micro expression that's you cannot hide it. It's impossible. You can make it less. You can make it express less for a millisecond, but you're unable to not express that micro expression when someone says something that grosses you out. But it's the same thing with everything. You can't fake it. You can't fake the bullshit. That's why people who are talking out of their ass never get to the top, usually. Because you're a con artist. People catch on to you. That's psychopathology. That's what it is. You're a psycho. You're trying to be someone you're not. You're trying to show everybody else you're something that you're not. That's what that is. Usually that comes from narcissistic habits and a desire to feel significant.
Yep.
But if you're going to try and speak out of your ass, and this is wrapping it right back to where we started, if you're going to try and speak out of your ass and say, I know everything about self-improvement, and I'm super into health, and I'm super into fitness, and I'm super into X, Y, and Z, and you do nothing with your day but sit on TikTok and fucking pick at your asshole, people are going to notice that. Even if they don't live with you, even if they only hear 30 seconds of you speaking, because you're not going to have that certainty most times. Sometimes you could fake it, and that's why I feel like sometimes I get more views on things, even if I'm not an expert. It's because I'm a perceived expert. Because when I speak about things, it's just through my Italian, stubborn, extroverted genes. I speak with certainty, and I speak concisely, and so people are like, oh, that must be true. And it sounds better, and people resonate with it harder because of just the way I speak. Yep. Now, that's could be a curse because I could be speaking out of my ass. People could still be like, oh, seems legit, you know? But I'm going to try my best to keep it real, if that makes sense.
Definitely. And I think from a personal perspective, yes, you should always try to keep it authentic. You should never try and speak out of your ass. But like, it's almost like, remember that one time, I forget who you were talking to on the phone. You almost intentionally left the phone unmuted because you wanted them to hear the conversation we were having, right? And it's because your friend never really never sees or hears this side to you. And
that's right.
You knew if they were to hear this, that might get them to think a different way. And I think this is different than trying to micromanage and appear a certain way and be a psycho, in that aspect. But I think there is, because if you're a person where, for instance, like, we're talking about the Alex Hormozi thing, right? Because, we mentioned this before. Like, I have not lived all of, or I can't speak with certainty on what Alex Hormozi says, right? I can just say it resonates and it makes sense from an intellectual standpoint and somewhat, very little, from an experiential standpoint. 100%. But I think when you are speaking on subjects like this, right, if I'm speaking as a signpost for Alex Hormozi after watching his podcast, when someone sees that clip and it changes their perspective, even though that may not be from the most authentic angle, and I'm not trying, even if I am a little bit trying to sound smart, which I'm not saying I am. I don't think I am, but I have been subject to that in the past, right? So, absolutely. But I think just in the mere fact alone that it's a good message and it can help people, and they interpret that in a way where they may not be like, oh, this guy is fucking, he's an asshole, he's speaking out of his ass, right? Like, that's more of like a personal accountability thing, but if their message is still good and it has value, I think it's a tough balance to strike, and I know what the ideal is scenario for sure, but it's almost like you should say those things even though it may not appear the most authentic, because it could help so many people, and that's ultimately
it depends on how you define authenticity.
Okay.
So like, if you parrot something that Alex Hormozi says, is it inauthentic?
Well, I just feel that.
Does it depend on the way you say it? Does it depend on, like, to me, the way I look at it is, are you being real? Period. If I say, listen, I haven't done a whole lot in business. We've been in business for 5 months. Yeah. I'm using this idea, insert idea here, from Alex Hormozi, and we're actively seeing results from it. Yeah. Try out that idea. Yeah. It's been working for us anecdotally for 4 months. That's real as fuck. Is it authentic? I think so. But then again, it just depends on how you define authentic. Yeah. But I completely agree. It's if you're going to take Alex Hormozi's advice and then let's fluff up what CJ Media is and be like, look at our shirts.
Making something that it's not.
100%. Is it real? Is it real? Like, where's it coming from? Yeah. Like, I just want someone to hear this.
Exactly, bro.
In the future.
Just saying.
Like, half of me wants someone to hear this and be like, oh, fucking dope. And then, personally, if you're starting a business right now, and that's what you want to learn, get off of our podcast, swipe off, type in Alex Hormozi and Gary V, and watch their shit. Obviously.
No, listen to us.
No, more views. You should. We know.
Like, subscribe.
Yeah.
Comment. Share this video. Fuck.
See, shit. But the other half of me likes the fact. I love you. The other half of me cannot wait to when we have editors to look back at this content and be like, I told you motherfuckers 5 years ago before we could speak on any truth because we didn't have a successful business that we've been applying this philosophy since day one, and it's just documentation that the same philosophy is going to apply. Maybe it doesn't. Maybe this is the funny part where he zooms back and says, remember when you said this, idiot, and you thought that you were super right and you totally misapplied Alex Hormozzi's rule or applied it right or whatever? Like, documentation, period. Yeah. And I think it's super important because I think we're going to be successful. I know we're going to be successful, as narcissistic as that sounds. I wish Jeff Bezos did this. I wish Musk did this. I wish Joe Rogan did this. And like whatever success means to you, not just monetarily, but like Joe Rogan's a big one for me. Like I wish I had his 20-year-old self when he was talking about how he was pursuing art, and then that high school teacher or college teacher, strayed him away from it from one really bad conversation, and then it transformed his life completely, and then he started getting into martial arts and other things like that. And it's just super interesting. Like super successful fighter, super successful comedian, super successful journalist. Like, holy shit. Like, can you imagine what his life would have been like, what his philosophy would have been like? Like, his 52 views on YouTube of his podcast when he was our age. Like, how cool would that be to look at now? Like, fascinating.
Yeah, very cool.
And I think if you're not taking advantage of it, I feel like
bro, that's sick.
I feel like our generation, like me and you are not going to just benefit from this, from looking back on YouTube in the archives when we're 50.
But it's fascinating.
But I hope somebody else can get some tidbits out of this, of your 22-year-old self. Maybe a 22-year-old is listening to this right now when you and I are 50 and are talking on our much higher horse on knowing and say, hey, you want our anecdotal advice? You want our real boots on the ground, nose in the shit when we actually felt that way? You want that advice? Go listen to the podcast from 2023. And it's going to be like, oh, shit. Maybe that Jason can give you better advice because that Jason knows what it feels like now to wake up in the morning and see your bank account at diddly fucking squat, and not the Jason on his high horse saying, you can do it because I did it. Maybe that's what's going to resonate with people more. And to me, it's like, fuck it. There's a million reasons to do it, so just do it. And if you're listening to this right now and you're the type of person that knows you're going to do it and you know you're going to make it and you don't know how you're going to do it, you don't know what the fuck road is going to be on, you just know.
Certainty.
Start recording a podcast. Start doing something where you're documenting, whether it's writing. Find your flavor. Have the discipline to document, if not for you, for the other people that are going to benefit from your perspective when you were at that time in your life. Because that growth, you don't need to be on your high horse to document. No. You don't need to be speaking from inauthentic perspectives to document. No. I don't care where you are in your life. If you know you're going to do it, especially if you know you're going to do it, document. However you want to do it, I don't give a shit. Do it. It's so important, not just for yourself in the future, but for everybody else. Fucking preach, brother.
Yeah, because what we were talking about before, like, I think it really is just documenting, and because at least what I found fascinating about that is it's not to say to put, I think what's really unique about us, and I think what's really interesting and what I took away from what you said there was, I don't know if, at least in my mind, where I believe we'll be in 10, 15 years from now, is I feel like case dependent, our lives can be completely different, but if I had to guess, we would be very similar to Chris Williamson and Alex Hormozzi, right? Not trying to say we're better than anybody else, but that's just like based on, we've created, I was thinking about this yesterday, we've created thousands of videos online. We have our own business. We have, at least I believe, great skills, great habits, great qualities, right? And so I think we're on a trajectory for that path, right? It's not just going to happen, right? It's because we're putting ourselves in a spot where, maybe we're making 0.01% every single day towards that reality, right? But that reality is at least the reality that I think we're going to be at, right?
We're chipping away at a dam that's going to fucking overflow.
Exactly, right? And I think what's really unique about us is we've been documenting for years now. Been doing this podcast almost 2 years now. Yeah. And it's like when you said Joe Rogan, David Goggins, like the only things that I can really think of when they're early is that insanely jacked picture of Joe Rogan when he's like 20, when he has hair, and also David Goggins when he's like either in Navy SEAL training, when he's like, obviously super jacked, or like him hunched over, and when he's like bigger, super fat, and it's like, they didn't have their perspective at all during that time, right? Because of the technology and because of like the limitations that they have. Those aren't limitations for us. And it's like, that just shows the value of documenting stuff now. And especially because I think a lot of people, it's like, different strokes for different folks. Like if you don't want to like document video wise, right? Like definitely document writing wise, because you can look back on that. You can give that notebook to your kid. You can give 100%. That notebook to your friend, right? Like, 100%. Or even just small video recordings on your phone that you can pull up in 5-10 years from now that you can 100%. Look back on to give you motivation. It's Dude, just like 100%. There's so much value in it, and so it's like much. It's really, really cool. And in the moment, I think a lot of times people will just be like, nah, like, I'll remember this, right?
Right.
Or it's like when you have a reminder.
Do not trust your memory.
No, dude, no. Like, write
memory.
It down in that moment. Right. It's way better, right?
100%.
But because you will forget.
You will. 100%.
Because I always do.
Me too, bro.
But yeah. Yeah, man, I think it's just, especially if you're doing it from an authentic angle.
That's it.
And like, I think just every single time I told you about the Marcus Aurelius example, like the other week, it's just when he had his journal.
So profound.
Back in ancient Rome, when he's an ancient Roman emperor, and he has pretty much all the power in the world. Mm-hmm. Like he's the head of the biggest empire in the world at the time. Yep. And for him to write to himself in his journal that he thought nobody would believe, and Ryan Holiday says if he knew today how many people knew about his writings, he would be sick to his stomach.
Right, he'd be so embarrassed.
Exactly. And so what was so fascinating is, because I know at least from when you're writing to yourself, or at least just from an intellectual standpoint, when you're thinking about yourself, you a lot of times have a very inflated version of who you are 100%. Versus who you actually are.
100%.
And that can have a lot of benefit, right? But it can have a lot of downside because you're not acknowledging the real, and that harms your ability to move towards a kind of spot where you want to go. And so what's so fascinating about Marcus...
Keep talking, I'm going to write this down.
Yeah.
Ironically, I don't want to forget.
What Marcus Aurelius's journal stated was, or what was so fascinating about his journal was how transparent he was within it, and just how accountable he held himself, and how he was so powerful, and he had so many things he could do, but he constantly would just be so truthful with himself. And to me, that is just such an ideal kind of standard to strive for, because based on who we are, based on our conditioning, based on how much of an inflated version we can have of ourselves, it's so hard, like we were talking about before, with, I forget exactly what we were talking about, with facing the facts, facing who you really are, and facing how shit might be awful, right? Like, our podcast is getting 20 views, right? 20, 30 views. This podcast might suck. And it sucks.
Yeah.
Right? And that no one's watching it. That's the reality, right? Like,
it just sucks less than it did a year ago.
Exactly, right? But like, you have to acknowledge that it sucks in order to move forward. And it's just so, the more brutally transparent you could be with yourself, especially in private settings, where you don't feel like anybody has to see on this podcast, just with yourself. No one has to see. No one. And
no one is gonna watch. That's the
no one's gonna watch. No one, right? So yeah.
Maybe you're getting a couple.
For the ear rape.
No one's watching.
Nice. All right. Well, at least I gave you the warning.
Yeah. No warning. I'm gonna cut to that. No warning.
That should be the intro clip.
It's like beautiful music.
Yeah, okay, cool. Go ahead.
So 2 things I wanted to touch on.
Yeah.
One is why people are so scared to post content. Because, okay, so we've already touched on the fact that it's so important to document, right? If you're afraid to start posting content online, it's for one of 2 reasons. Either 1, you're afraid of what people are going to say to you, and reasonably so. They might make fun of you. They probably will. But 2, you're going to speak from a place of inauthenticity, and you know that it's a load of shit. Mm-hmm. If you document where you're at, and you just truthfully speak from where you are, and you don't try to speak from your high horse, and you don't try to talk from a perspective that's not actually yours, you'll be fine. The only thing you have to get over if you're being inauthentic is the fact that you're afraid of other people's judgment. And that's one of the things I think has been so profound for me, and definitely for you as well, is like, we've had to seriously get over the fact that, like, people are going to make fun of us. And they probably do.
Yeah, man.
Whatever. Fuck it. Like, that's been one of the biggest growth factors for me is like, the more we've done a podcast, the more I've posted content on TikTok and Instagram and just chopped up all my shit. Like, dude, the amount that I've grown just from having an Instagram account and a TikTok account that's public where I talk about self-improvement is insane. The level of give a fuck that I have about people's opinions is crazy.
Yeah.
It's crazy. It's because the more that I post about the things that I truthfully believe in, and the more I expose myself open to attack, make fun of me, leave hate comments, spew your bullshit behind my back, and let me find out about it sometimes and have these gut-wrenching feelings of like, Jesus, that hurts. Jesus, it hurts to find out that these people that I grew up with that I thought I was really good friends with talk shit about me behind my back and made fun of my podcast and didn't do it to my face. And like all these shitty-ass feelings that are like, it hurts. You go through that enough times, bro. You're fucking ironclad, bro.
Yeah.
You're good. You start posting content of yourself, honest, vulnerable, your true beliefs on the internet, you're going to stop giving a fuck what people think real fast. A big part of that also is you have to stop reading comments. That's one of the things that's been like, that's one of the things I had to learn because I got a really good taste of it when my TikTok started doing really well. When you start getting a lot of comments, dude, it doesn't matter how positive your shit is, dude. People are going to tear you apart. And you can't read that shit. And I got a small taste of it. I can't imagine what it's like to be an actual big name where everything you do is public and it gets millions of views and thousands of comments on every single thing you do. It doesn't matter what it is. So it's like, that's the only thing you have to couple it with. Like in the beginning, sure, if you don't have many comments, people are commenting, it's probably good to get the feedback. But Christ, is it?
Yeah, it's hard to sift through.
It's so hard to sift through. The only other thing I wanted to bring up, because I just you touched on this, was how many episodes we've done. Like when you were saying we've put out thousands of pieces of content, it's so true. It's like, dude, the one thing that I've realized, especially over the past couple months, is I've hit a breaking point of or more so of a plateau in our podcast where my ego's been forced to drop because I feel like we've exhausted so many topics so fully through. We're like, you can watch any of these episodes and you're going to get my 2 cents on most of these things and most of my perspective. Definitely. And the same thing with you. Now I'm forced to be in a spot where we document and it's pure, raw, authentic. There's no more to fluff anymore. And once you're, a couple hundred episodes into a podcast and a couple thousand hours into these conversations, and you've really fully digested all these topics, I know your views so well. You know my views so well to the point where, A, I can't bullshit you or myself, but
So true.
B, you'll call me out and you'll be like, didn't you?
Yeah.
But C, now you really have to come up with pure documentation because most of the things we're going to talk about are going to be relevant to now and then our philosophies on now. Yeah. And so it really
will change. It will change.
100%. It will develop. It will grow. But the thing that I've noticed the most is that my ego's really had to drop the more time I've spent having conversations in a podcast room. Because the more I talk about things, the more I realize I don't know. Like the more time you spend actually learning, the more you realize you don't know shit. You don't know dick, dude. Like take cameras. Perfect example.
Oh, God.
You get the R6, you're like, oh, I know this. ISO, shutter, and fucking f-stop.
It's the basics.
And you think you know cameras until you get an R5C and you realize that there's pages and pages and pages of settings. And then in each little setting, there's pages and pages and pages of shit to learn. And you're like, what the fuck? There's like a holy Bible of cameras that I missed out on.
Oh, bro. Oh, my God.
It's insane.
Oh,
it's insane.
The thing is, the R5C is an entry-level cinema camera.
That's the part. Like when I saw it was like
a beginner cinema camera, homie.
We don't know dick.
We don't know any.
We don't know dick. And we own a videography business.
Come on, Mitch. CJ Media, you know.
But yeah, what I was getting at was, the more time I've spent having conversations with people, with
pages on a page, and then you go into the specific setting. There's pages of it. That's so good.
It's so true, though.
Sorry,
but it's just the more I've talked to you about life, the more I realize I don't know shit.
Right.
The more conversations you have, the more you write, the more you read, the more you learn. the more humbled you become, because the vastness becomes more and more evident to you as you try and learn everything. You realize you're gonna know nothing. The more you learn, the more you realize you don't know shit.
Yeah.
And it's really as simple as that. And I appreciate you, bro.
Appreciate you too,
But
man.
B, PSA number 1006. Start your own shit. Start posting content. Start documenting your journey in life, even if you don't know what the fuck you're talking about. You don't have to pretend like you do. I would suggest you don't do that. I would suggest you just document where you're at, especially if you feel like you're going to make it in life, in whatever endeavor. Document that situation and see how much you grow as a result of that. See how much you stop caring about what other people think about you. Because before your first post, you're going to have this huge level of, I don't want to post. I don't want my friends from high school to make fun of me. I don't want the captain of the fucking dance team to say some shit because she thinks that I'm fucking weird because I'm posting content or whatever. Post the content. You're going to grow tremendously as a result of it, and you can help, even if you help one life. Think about what you could do with that.
Crazy.
I've said this a million times, and I'll say it again.
Yep.
You're one person away from impacting 1 million people, and you're 2 people away from impacting 1 billion people. What you do, what you say, how you influence others matters way more than you think. And when it's good, it's way better than you think. And when it's bad, it's way worse than you think. If you have the opportunity to influence people in a positive manner and change your life, do it. Make your dreams come true. Yeah.
Fire, man.
All right. Cool. Love yourself because I love you.
Stay handsome.